Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our latest Grey's Anatomy Season 17 review. And this is an episode that there was so much hype around. Like, who's going to come back? Who will it be? Who will it be?
And who was it?
It was George O'Malley,
So
everyone.
if you had George, you were right. I mean, there was only sort of a few people that I think a lot of us thought it was going to be. George was definitely on that list.
Yeah, in my head, it was either George, Ellis, Lexie,
Yep.
like maybe Mark. I thought it was just sort of that list. They were going to bring back some nobody character. There were some like sleuths who saw something on like IMDb or something that...
Yeah, it's just hard with IMDb because it's kind of like Wikipedia in a lot of ways that anybody can go on and change stuff. There's stuff on my IMDb that I didn't put there that I know is wrong. So I trust IMDb.
Yeah, I did not believe anything until I saw George. I was like, oh, that's George. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I really like the George stuff.
Yeah, it was good.
I actually... The surprise with Derek was better, and the emotion with Derek was better, but I actually feel like they gave T.R. Knight more to actually do than they gave Patrick Dempsey.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Before we do, though, if you guys do enjoy this discussion, subscribe to the channel. We are here talking about Grey's Anatomy, of course, all season. We don't want you to miss any of that.
Yeah, and being subscribed is the absolute best way to make sure you don't miss any of our stuff, and it helps support the channel, helps support us.
Speaking of helping to support the channel, it is the holiday season, and if you're looking for a gift for a Matt and Jess viewer you love, or yourself, we've got the store linked in the description. You can get a shirt like this one. We've got phone cases and all sorts of other cool stuff there as well.
All right, so let's talk a little bit sort of about the George of it all, and also about the Derek of it all, because, I mean, when he first came back, and it was sort of like, Meredith was saying, oh, why can't I get to you? And he's like, oh, the sand isn't real. And as they kept trying to get closer, she was falling away. And then she literally fell on her face. And there was no, like, reunion where they were hugging or kissing or touching or even sitting next to each other. And then we had George come in, and it really was good. It was really powerful, emotional stuff. But they were able to sit beside each other on a log. Like, I was like, well, you couldn't give me this with Derek as well? Yeah, I'm being greedy, but this is what I want.
I don't really have a great theory. I'm going to give the theory anyway that's on my mind, because as interesting as it was to hear George talk about being a ghost, we have to remember that this is not like actually canon to the real world of Grey's Anatomy. Like, the ghost of George, unless we really want to go down a supernatural rabbit hole here, the ghost of George isn't presumably just out there. This is what Meredith thinks about George. And by virtue of that, I think there's a part of Meredith that feels like if she embraces Derek, that she will never actually get out of this. And I think she wants to get out of it. And luckily, her manifestation of George is very much a, hey, you should get out of this and be with the kids that I didn't even know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that really did feel like part of why George was there as well in her mind, to remind her of sort of all the wonderful things that she's going to miss, as big as her children, as small as eating cereal out of the box.
And I think it was good that it was George for the messaging that they told. Like, don't get me wrong, I was all in on Lexie. I wanted Lexie. Why can't Kyler Lee be in two different cities at the same time to make this happen?
Or just green screen it.
They'll figure it out. We want Lexie. But, I think this was good for George because the story was sort of about sacrifice for the sake of others. George literally sacrificed himself.
Yes, he did.
So I think it was a very good way to bring him in and be like, George probably would love to hang out with Meredith and talk about old times and all that, but he knows there are other people out there that need Meredith more.
Yeah, and so now we're in this situation where it looks like back in real life she's going to be going into some sort of a trial.
Richard Webber. Okay, let's talk about scenes that tried to emotionally break me in this episode. We had first everything with George. Just give me TR, he's such a good underrated actor. He's got like this weird cadence to how he talks.
Yep.
You gotta like hang on every word. I was so happy to have him back.
And then you've got Richard, who almost every time I see this guy, he's emotionally kicking me right in the heart. Like everything last season, now we have this where he's really doesn't know what to do, if it's the right thing to put Meredith in this trial where some people are dying in it, or do nothing and hope for the best. It's such a weird time, and it makes it even more powerful because we're all living it.
And I kind of like just the contrast almost between science and almost faith, almost religion, where Richard is, he's the most accomplished doctor out of almost anyone there. He's been doing this for decades, and yet he's in front of Meredith basically doing his give me a sign, like I don't know what to do. Like that just spoke volumes to me about the situation.
Yeah, and then actually seeing him in sort of her, extra world here where she's, possibly going towards death, and seeing Richard sitting there on that log with them. I mean, it tells us that obviously she is really struggling with what she's going to do.
Yeah, and I think there's a part of her who knows obviously what she wants, but does she have the ability? Can she continue fighting? The one other thing I'll say about George that I liked is that they found a way to write in the fact that, as good as TR Knight looks, like he can't magically like de-age himself 10 years from when he was last on the show.
For sure. And I mean, it was nice that they found a way to kind of bring that in, to be like, why do you look so much older? I don't know. Why are you thinking about me so much older?
It was there somehow, some way they found a way to make a couple of like laugh out loud moments.
It was good.
In the midst of like this life or death circumstance. Though they also referenced the fact that people were laughing at George's funeral, so they really kind of took it all back around. Okay, here's the other bad news now, though, is that we really got to be worried for our guy Tom Karasik.
Yeah, and so here's my theory,
Okay.
And I don't know if anybody out there is going to like it or not. You can flame me in the comments if you think that it's not great, but I think that Tom is going to die. And now I don't know sort of the contract of this actor. I don't know if he's signed on to be series regular for the next 10 years. Obviously it's not going on 10 years, but you know what I mean. Yeah. I don't know what his contract is. But what I do know is that everything that's going on with the virus in life, the show is really looking to bring it into the show and bring us into this experience of being with the doctors and the nurses in the hospital and everything that everyone is going through. I will find it hard to believe that this show is going to move us through the virus and then out on the other side of it, and nobody important in the world of this show is going to die from it. And right now, Tom's story is wrapped up a little bit. I mean, everything with Teddy is done now. He doesn't have another thing that's going on right now, except that he has this virus, and he is in a really bad way. So I'm actually really worried that Tom is going to go, and that this show is going to have something like that happen, to really sort of hit home to everybody, like how bad this is.
I'm really worried. Like I almost hate to say that I think you're right, but that's only because I don't want Tom to die, and didn't love all the stuff with Teddy that much at the end of last season, but there was a time when I was all in on Tom Karasik as a character because he was so just like curmudgeon-y and different, and yet he'd had this sad backstory of stuff happening to him, and I wanted to see this man be happy, but it is kind of like you say, in that you do want to show serious stakes, and they're obviously not going to kill Meredith. I just don't imagine a world where that happens.
No, I do not see any universe that they're going to kill Meredith. For me, the show is Meredith. If she's not there, the show is not going on. It shouldn't go on for me. However, the show can go on without Tom. Yeah. And, this is such a serious thing that's happening right now. And the show really does want to show everybody how serious it is. I'm worried for Tom.
And I just thought for a little while that they were just going to do a story with him where they were just sort of showing what frustration it people who are asymptomatic are feeling. Like, I thought that was all that was going to be going on here, because it was like, okay, we already have Meredith who is really, really sick with it, so they're just showing something different. But then when Teddy is there and talking through the door, and they're not giving us the camera angle of Tom, or Tom yelling at her to go away, that's when I was starting to get really worried.
Yeah, I actually thought he was like passed out or, dead already. I didn't know what was going on until we saw the preview, and he is going to be being rushed into the hospital. But I mean, is it going to be too little too late? I don't know.
Yeah, and I wish Tom had spoken out about it sooner. We know Tom is a prideful person. I think that's putting it mildly with Tom Karasik.
Yeah.
I don't think he wanted to show weakness, unfortunately. Here we are, Tom, I'm pulling for you. You deserve some sort of future happiness that does not involve Teddy, because that did not work well for you at all.
Yes. Find somebody who is single.
There you go. We're here with the good advice, Tom Karasik.
Yeah.
Speaking of romantic advice, do we give any to Jackson and to Joe at this point?
I don't think at this point. I mean, they hooked up. They're friends. They're hooking up. They have both, as they said, been through a lot when it comes to relationships right now. Neither of them want to be in a relationship right now. But that doesn't mean that this isn't going to turn into something later on. There's lots of relationships, even on this show, that start out with hey, we're just going to be like this, and then morph into something else. It's just like life. Sometimes hookups are just hookups. Sometimes they turn into lifelong relationships.
I think there was a moment in this episode where I leaped into Jackson's brain, and I think it was when he was doing that whole monologue of, I was with Vic right after I was with Maggie, and then I was like, so thanks for reminding us that you guys have not given Jackson anything to do other than just being with various love interests for the past few. I have been railing on this for so long.
No, and it's true. He has really just been relationship, and it is time for him to have something else. And I'm glad that they're kind of not just, okay, well, now he's just in a relationship with Joe.
I did kind of find it funny, though, how they did the whole, in the Netherlands, this is said, and that, went around to, multiple different characters in the episode.
Yeah, they needed an excuse for this.
Yeah, they needed it, and I guess Levi is just trying to justify the fact that Nico has not exactly been the greatest partner in the world to him.
No, and even when they had that conversation where Levi was kind of like, listen, what has changed? And he's just like, everything has changed. Everything with the virus and the whole world. Okay, but that doesn't actually mean that things have changed with the two of them. So I'm curious to see sort of if that's really going to change. Has it changed Nico's mindset or not?
Can I just say big picture, because I did not know how Grey's Anatomy was going to handle this season. I thought, is it going to be too just extremely depressing all the time? And yeah, it has had its fair share of depressing moments, especially early on.
Yeah, especially with that premiere. I mean, if you've seen our other reviews, I could only get through the first half of the premiere in one sitting. I had to regroup and get back in.
I will say with this episode, though, it really actually just sort of felt like Grey's Anatomy to me.
It's because George was there.
Maybe it was because...
I think part of it was. I mean, he does bring in sort of this other side, this lightness, brings you back kind of thing.
I do think there is a lot to be said about how I think Krista Vernoff and the writers probably were sort of thinking, okay, we're going to really hit people with some pretty depressing stuff here. Let's try to find a way to balance that out. And it's just that joy of seeing, here is a guy who hasn't been on the show in a decade, someone people really, really liked. Yes, George probably was a love interest of almost every female character on the show at some point or another. But you know what? It was just nice to have him there. And even though Meredith's in peril, they've done a really good job of sort of finding ways to insert little moments of joy amidst all of the darkness.
Yeah, and then we also have to talk about Lake and Amelia. I mean, they're sort of going through it as well as everybody is. And it was a really good and I think important moment to see sort of how she deals with things and how he's dealing with things when it comes to sort of the crisis and everything just sort of in life, to remind all of us out there that are all sort of at home, staying at home, to be patient with each other in a way that we give understanding of how the other person deals with stuff, because, you know, we don't all deal with things the same way.
I just like that they didn't really say this way is right or this way is wrong. Like, everyone can deal with this however they want to deal with it. And, you know, there are healthy ways to just communicate that to other people, because I feel like a lot of other shows it would have been like, you know, Link, you're wrong, or Amelia, you're wrong, and then there would be some compromise like that. But they sort of found their way in their own unique form with Link in his uniquely named song about despair and sadness that just sounds happier than that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they did it that way, because that's the truth. Everybody deals with things differently, and none of them are wrong.
Yeah, and I really like this episode overall. Like, I feel like, as sad and worried as I am about Karasik, I think it was just, there was nostalgia. We had some good Richard Webber moments. They've left me a lot to be worried about. We don't even have to get into Bailey and her situation.
Yeah, we also had some good DeLuca moments, too, where he was really pushing to get Meredith into that trial, that there's an importance to do something. If your choice is something or nothing, and nothing's not working, then do something. I thought that was really good. It's nice to see him just sort of back in it.
And being, you know, a hero, and really being sort of like the person leading the charge after Meredith led the charge for him. And it's sort of like with Tom in the preview, where, you know, he's helped Amelia significantly, he helped Catherine, and now they all want to do their best to go to bat for him.
Yeah.
So many full circle moments this week, but
very good season so far.
Let's hear from you guys. What did you think about George? But also, they didn't mention it in the promo, but do you think anyone else is coming back? Are we seeing someone else on the beach?
I feel like we probably will. I don't think it's not over yet. We saw her in the preview. She's still sort of out, so, you know.
Lexie. Yes.
Grey's also, Anatomy. More Derek.
I feel like we're gonna get more Derek. I hope that we're gonna get. If not, I will personally yell at Patrick Dempsey for lying in that Ellen interview he gave. But
hashtag more Derek.
Let us know about this episode. If you like this video, subscribe, give us a like, support us further. Check those links to the store, our Patreon, and we will see you here next time.